Hej, god morgon allihopa. Jag heter Martin Burns. Jag kommer från Skottland men nu jag bor i Stockholm. Är det okej om jag pratar engelska? My Swedish is not great, but yes, your English is, I'm sure, very much better. So, I thought I'd just tell you who I am and why should I be standing up here talking to you about SAFE. So, terrible picture, but hey, it's me, recognisably me. So I have a little bit of a long background in working with software with large organisations, going back about 15 years, starting with PricewaterhouseCoopers as a digital CRM business analyst, and I did web development before that. But with a few large organisations, some British, some global. Then IBM bought us. And I went into project management around that time, so worked with a few other reasonably large customers. While I was doing that, I discovered Agile and Lean. It took me about 3 years to stop being skeptical about it and realize there is some useful stuff here. And I discovered it was so useful that actually I spent 2-3 years helping other teams inside IBM's service organization do this better. So some of those organizations. Then last year I left IBM, spent 6 months with one of Britain's biggest banking groups, and then came here, and I've worked with a few organizations here, plus some others that I can't talk about right now. So I've been doing this a while. I've got some certifications along the way, some traditional project management ones, but specifically relevant for today, I actually spent my own money to find out what this SAFE thing is. And I'll tell you why. Last year, before I left IBM, I was working with the UK bank. And my role was to say, we kind of like the idea of this agile thing, but how do we make it work for us in our context? So I spent 2 or 3 months thinking and talking to internal stakeholders and working out what those needs might be. And I started coming up with an idea. And it had multiple layers to it. It had a team layer, it had a program layer, and then it had a portfolio layer and governance layer on top of that. Now, all of you have got in front of you the SAFE big picture. That kind of describes, in outline, what I was reaching. So when I discovered SAFE, because clearly I was looking around to see what was out there in the marketplace of ideas, I thought, this is what I've been trying to draw for the last 2 or 3 months. Only it's drawn better. And it's been tried with real-world organizations. It's not just my crazy ideas. It's other people as well who've got more experience than I have. So that's how I discovered SAFE. And the more I looked at it, the more it kind of seemed to meet the needs of the kind of organizations I was working with. So I spent my own money, got certified to find out how it works. And nothing I have seen since then has told me this is a bad model. There are some organizations where it might not work so well, particularly, and we'll talk about it as we're going through, if you're already able to do small team agile, if you're already able to put 6 to 8 people in a room and have everybody that can make a decision in that room and say, do the right thing. If you can do that already, you probably don't need this. Other than that, if you're a large organization that's struggling to do agile, this could help. Okay, so that's a bit about me. I kind of hope there will be 10 cards on the table. I was trying to just gain a little bit of understanding about what the level of understanding of Agile is. Okay, I'm going to do this by a show of hands. I do apologise. If you consider yourself some kind of leader in a software delivery organisation, can you just put your hand up? So, yeah, in any kind of leadership role. Okay. If you consider yourself a consultant, I know we have some consultants in as well as me. Yeah, either internal or external. Right, lots of internal change agents. Okay. Anybody else who's interested? Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands and to tell me how expert you think you are. That would be embarrassing. I would expect, particularly if we have consultants in the room and change agents, there is a range of understanding. I am trying to target my talk to people that have relatively low understanding for two reasons. Firstly, because those kinds of people need this information. But secondly, and this I found hard as a consultant, if your job is change and you consider yourself to know quite a lot, it's very hard to put yourself in the position of somebody who isn't. You are cursed by the amount of knowledge you have. So it's taken me a long time to unlearn speaking like an expert. To be able to talk to people who don't know this stuff in a way that helps them understand, that doesn't talk down to them, that introduces them to the ideas, but still accepts, look, in your organisation, you know more about that than I ever will. You're an expert in that. I know some of the content, but how it would work in your organisation? No idea. So if you consider yourself an expert and you're thinking through this, yeah, I know this, come on, come on. Treat it as a learning exercise of how do I speak to people that don't know this? When I work as a change agent, how do I present this? Because in some senses, SAFE is designed for traditional managers who don't know this stuff. And it's designed to be easy to understand from that traditional mindset. Okay. So, what do you want to get out of this morning? And I'm going to write these on stickies, and I've got about 2/3 of our time that we have available as me talking time, and the rest as discussion time. So if it's not covered in your talk, absolutely I want to cover it in a more open discussion. So I'm going to throw it open. What do we want to learn?
How to address change.
Okay, so the question is how to address change. Okay. I think I've got a little bit of that in the talk, and if not, we'll come back and check that we've done that. And if not, we'll talk about it in more detail.
Metrics.
Metrics. Okay. SAFE has got quite a lot of metrics at many levels. I don't know if I'm going to cover it during this, but I've got some of that in my head, and if not, definitely there is more in the full material. Examples. Okay. Okay.
How do you apply agility from management down?
Okay. Top, down. So would some of that be around business benefit of agility and working to convince management this is good for you?
I work with government.
Yeah.
And we have some leading group that decides which project we want to have, and we have an annual cycle.
Right.
For releases, and how do we really apply agility to kind of planning?
Okay, so applying agility in a portfolio management and plan sense. Okay, we will definitely cover that. Resource management. Okay, that's not in my slides, but absolutely we can talk about that. Some of it will be what SAFE says, some of it will just be my opinions.
And also why your architecture is so late for the SAFE.
Okay, why is architecture?
Why are you working without architecture?
Okay, so emerging architecture.
Yeah, because you have the version 3 is 3.0, and before you have any architecture.
Aha, that's a different thing. Okay, so it's SAFE's development almost. I try to remember the previous picture. There was definitely architecture in the methods before. I don't know if it was on the picture before version 3.
Actually, architecture runaway was included on 3.
Okay, the concept was definitely there earlier, but we'll talk about that.
I don't know if it's the same question, but how the enterprise architecture affects this management?
Right. Enterprise architecture and release management. Yes, okay.
Something around agile project management.
Right. Agile project management. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Now I have to remember where I put my clicker. There it is. Good. Okay. And we'll come back and at the end of me talking and see if there are any more thoughts and ideas. Okay. I'm not going to ask you to shout this out, but think through. What is your experience so far of Agile? What does it say to you? And bear in mind, I spent 3 to 5 years as a complete skeptic, mostly because I worked in an organisation who did it very badly, for whom it was no discipline, no documents, make it up as you go along. This was an organisation that had 10 million customers in the UK. You can't do that at that scale. Okay, who has a traditional project management background of some sort? Yeah? Okay, the next slide may be fairly familiar to you. When you deliver a project, what's a win? Is it one of those? Anyone recognise that? If you deliver a project and you get those, is that a good thing? Yeah? Yeah? All of those? Actually, Agile says it's something else. And what that is, we're going to play a little game. You've all got a set of coins on your table. Okay? We're going to play a little game with them. Now, can I ask somebody on each table to find some kind of stopwatch? Fortunately, with smartphones, this is easier. We're going to do a little process exercise. What we're going to do is we're going to take our stack of what I hope are 10 coins, and we're going to process them through the whole team. Okay? And the way we process them is we take one coin at a time, and we turn it over. Okay? And when we've done all 10, we pass them on to the next person. Okay? So, whoever is timing, I'd like 2 times from you. And in the first round, they will be the same time. Okay? What I want is from the amount of time from the first person to start to when the last person has finished. Okay? Actually, let's just do that in the first round. The second round, we'll do something a little different. Okay? So, remember, all 10 coins flipped before you pass them on. Okay? In your own time. Off you go. No, no, just once. We'll do something different in a moment. Okay, almost all done. Okay. Are we all done? Okay, let's have some timing. So I'm going to go kind of round the room and try and do it the same the second time. Okay, so how long did it take you?
40.8 seconds.
Oops, 40.8 seconds. Okay.
40.65 seconds.
Oh, I like the precision.
8 to 7, 6.
Okay, at the back.
1 minute 20 seconds.
1 minute 20 seconds. Okay, next.
34 seconds.
34 seconds, 94. 93. Okay. That hundredth of a second really matters. 38.8. Okay.
44.43.
44.43.
36.28.
But there's only 3 of you. Okay. Quite a variation. But, you know, reasonable amount of time. And I know the 1 minute 20 guys, there's more of you, right? So, yeah, okay. Now I'd like you to do something different. And I'd like 2 times from you this time. When you pass it this time, instead of doing all 10 coins and passing them on, just do 2 of them. Pass them on. Then 2 more. And pass them on. And so on. Now, the 2 timings I want is when the first 2 coins have been round everywhere. Okay, so when the first 2 coins are complete. And secondly, when they're all complete. Okay? Everyone understand? That seemed to go a lot quicker. Okay, let's see if my it seems information is correct. So, time to first completion. 5.4 seconds, and all of them? 13.6. Okay, second table?
8 and 16.
8 seconds and 16 seconds. 18 and 30. Okay.
16, 97, and then the first one was 11.
Right, so 11 and 1697. 4.1 and 11.
Based on corrective.
8 seconds and 20 seconds.
6 and 19.
6 seconds and 19. Okay. 2 things we'll notice about this. 3 things we'll notice about this. Firstly, all the times are a lot shorter. Now, I don't think this is because you're practiced at the skill. Not that amount of difference. So I'm just looking at the total times here, which we can compare, the blue ones. They're also a lot more consistent. Less variation. If you're planning something and promising it to stakeholders, consistency helps. The second thing is, you got the first value out of the system vastly faster. So that's what this is about. Your stakeholders, if I go back one, do not care if you're on time, on budget, on quality, on scope, if you're delivering something that isn't valuable. They care about outcomes, not outputs. Yes, clearly if you don't meet your promises, they're going to be cross about it. But if you deliver something that's not valuable, it's not useful. So, think about how quickly you can deliver value. From idea, business person says, I know what we should do this, to it being live on a production system. Because until then, it's just dead money. You've spent the money, you're getting no value from it until it's a working system. So if I had an idea today in your organization, what's the soonest it could be in production? You know, I've worked in some government organizations, to take the government as an example. I've had ministerial attention on a project I was working on, and it was not fun. I've also worked on government projects where we were doing one thing, and for entirely political reasons based on what was in the day's newspaper, the minister stood up in the parliament and said, we're doing something different. If we had said, but we've got a plan and we're going to be on time and on budget and on quality and on scope, exactly what you asked for, it would have not gone down well. And in the commercial sense, marketable ideas are time sensitive. There is no point. Right, I've got an iPhone 5. Okay? If I'm Samsung, there's no point in me launching a phone like this anymore. Because Apple have done something better. Good ideas are valuable, but they lose value over time. So when you're doing business cases, how much is in there about the economic impact of how long it's going to take you? As opposed to simply, well, it's going to cost us this amount of money. Can I have a 10 million SEK budget, please? Surely the answer to that is, well, when are you going to deliver it? I can't tell you whether you can have that much money until I know when it's going to deliver, not just how much revenue I'm going to get extra per year from it. So if we consider traditional ways of working, right? This is a traditional project. You write some requirements, you do a design, you implement it, you test it, and then you have some value delivering software, right? What are the outputs from those stages? Well, from requirements, you get some paper. From design, you get more paper. Once you've written the code, well, you've got code, but until you've tested it, it doesn't work. You don't know it works. You wouldn't put it on a production system. It's not until you actually deliver it that you get any value at all. So if I graph that value against time, right, just on a percentage basis, what's it going to look like? Yeah, it's going to go nothing, 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 all the value from that point until, well, decreasing if it's marketable. So imagine you say to a stakeholder, look, let's do this differently. Let's start delivering small bits of it early. It doesn't have to be the perfect solution. It doesn't have to be everything. But I can deliver you something that will be valuable early. And then I'm going to build on that and make it more valuable and more valuable. Again, think about how hardware companies iterate through products. You know, the first iPhone, the camera on it, you could hardly tell who you were taking a photo of. This camera is pretty good. You know, I used to carry an SLR, digital SLR. I don't because I've got this now. So what would the value time curve look for that? Okay, well, there's the other one by comparison. So I deliver something, and I start getting some value. And I start realizing that value from the day I deliver it. And then I deliver some more, and 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 some more, until finally we have delivered the same scope. And by the time it's all delivered, it's at the same time. But look at all this incremental value. More value earlier. Or if you want to look at it from the other perspective, delivering it later incurs a cost of delay. So if you're going to deliver something later, it's like going to your stakeholders and say, I'm going to cost you another 10 million SEK just because I'm delivering it later. I wouldn't want to have that conversation. It's not a fun conversation. And if you're really smart, you'll schedule these so that your biggest value is delivered earlier. What's the correlation between amount of code you deliver and amount of value you deliver? Pretty small. The relationship between I deliver a small thing and it being valuable or not, it's not great. I can deliver a huge thing that takes a vast amount of work, but it might not deliver much value. So if I schedule the most valuable things first, there we go, then that cost of delay, or incremental value, is even stronger. So, why do we do Agile? It accelerates value delivery. And that's a happy conversation to have with a stakeholder. But it does some other things as well, which we'll come back to. But big projects. Who would do a big project? Who would take the risk of leading a big project? I've led some big projects. I've led a project where I was billing £1 million a month to a customer. Delivered no value at all because it was in a regulated industry and the regulator said no. Fortunately, I was only the delivery leader. I wasn't responsible for the actual value. I never had to explain to the CEO, who was a very scary person. Okay. It's being recorded. I can't tell you who it was. Ask me afterwards and I'll tell you who it was. Really, you wouldn't do it. And I'll tell you why. It's because, okay, if I do, again, a graph. I like graphs. Can you tell? Between budget size and risk tolerance. Okay. If I have a small budget, how tolerant are my stakeholders to risk? High, low?
Low.
Pretty high. If I have a big budget, how much inspection am I going to get? And how much risk am I taking?
No.
Exactly. Nobody's going to tolerate you being out of control when you are spending a lot of money. However, what's the probability of success with a very small thing that's easy to control, that's just like 3 or 4 people? reasonably high. And what if I have 100 people for a year with vast complexities of systems? Yeah, it goes the other way. Why would you run a big thing? Why would you choose to say, right, I want, dear stakeholders, I want you to be absolutely committed to spending 10 million, 100 million SEK over 5 years? It's not a conversation that's happy. Again, same government organisation, actually. Once we started talking about small pieces of work that required small plans and were easy to do, suddenly our stakeholders started making everything small, because it was easy to get through their governance, and they could see the control, and they could see things being delivered, and that we gained a lot of trust doing it. Okay, another good reason why we do Agile. It's about the future. How much money would you give me for next week's lottery numbers? How much money would you give me for last week's lottery numbers? Okay, if the future is knowable, planning is easy. Okay, if you know exactly what you're going to do, if it's the kind of project where there is only one solution, and you get some experts in and they can tell you what to do, they're fairly easy. You know, you build a data center, there's really only one way to do it. Okay? Some regulation is like this. There is only one solution. We implement the regulation. Done. Anything that's in an environment that has variables in, that has other players who do unpredictable things, doesn't work like that. But if the future is knowable, it's really easy. You have some inputs, you have a process, you have an output. Project managers call this plan the work the plan. Okay? And this is like, in military terms, the kind of artillery they had in the First World War. Just for scale, that's a person. Okay? This is one of those big guns that is so big, it has to run on train tracks. So you spend a long time, clearly it's not going to move very fast, getting it to the right place, aiming it precisely, accounting for every variable, and then firing a very, very big, very slow shell, and hitting something. Now, if the thing you're aiming at never moves, First World War, trenches, never moved, or a bunker, that works really, really well. Because what you're controlling for is not variability. You're just controlling for doing it right. So you predict what you need to do, you plan it, you implement it, and then you assess, did that work? You're trying to remove uncertainty by doing this. Yeah? Just as long as we do it in the right way, everything will be fine. And if anybody tries to take us off plan, we will resist that. Does this sound like a normal change management, change control process in projects? Yes? Not so much change control as change resistance. We have a plan. Don't knock us off the plan. Because if you knock us off the plan, we'll have to stop for a month to replan it. Anyone have one of those? So that's great if what you're delivering you know will never need to change. Unfortunately, predicting the future doesn't work that way. I talked about lottery numbers. Here's Apple's share price up to yesterday afternoon. Okay, so it goes as low as, I think that's about 60, and it goes up to 100 and some over the last 18 months. If I were asking you for 10,000 of your own money, for your own SEK, who would want to tell me where the share price is going to be in a year? Okay. What range would you put your money on? That if it's within that range, I'll get some money back. If it's not, I lose it. If I were betting it, for my money, and I was saying I want to specify a range in which I win, I would say, well, within the next year, it'll probably be somewhere between 50 and 200. Because I want to be confident of winning, right? What about if it's a week? Now, yes, we've got some jumps, and I don't know what last night's event did to Apple's share price. But what kind of range would you put your money on for a week's worth of prediction? It's not going to be that wide. You know, if it were me, I'd say, well, somewhere between 90 and 120 maybe. Short-term variability is much less. Short-term is easier to predict with confidence. Yeah? If I start walking down the street and I'm saying, right, I want to walk with my eyes closed just based on a prediction, how long would you do that for? A couple of meters, maybe? Hope that all the people walking around you spot that you're doing that and avoid you? Well, you might miss some of the fixed obstacles, but you wouldn't do it for 100 meters. Well, I wouldn't. So, that's because the future varies. And it doesn't vary linearly, it varies exponentially. Reality does not care about your plan. Doesn't care how careful you were about your plan. Doesn't care how well controlled your plan is. Doesn't care how good your people are. It does what it wants. So, I'm a big fan of the US show The West Wing. Has anybody seen it? Okay, who's this guy? Okay, he's the chief of staff to the White House, okay, to the president. And in the pilot episode, he has two economists. And he says to them, where's the Dow Jones going to be in a year's time? Stock prices again. And one says, fantastic, 1,000 points up. The other one, awful, 1,000 points down. And he replies, in a year's time, one of you is going to look pretty stupid. And then he goes on to say, if the president were here, he would say, economists were put on this earth to make astrologers look good. And the same for projects. The same for reality. The further out you go, the more it varies from where you expect. So it's easy to predict a short time out. Long time out, it starts becoming exponentially hard. So let's deal with reality as it is, rather than trying to control it. And in software, there's three reasons why that happens. Firstly is if I describe something to you, no matter how many documents I write, no matter how much time we spend sitting together and talking it through, you're going to pick up a different idea. It might be slightly different, it might be a lot different, but it's going to be different. If you magnify that over 100 people, even bigger. Second thing is, while you're doing it, reality moves on. I don't like to think how many things I've delivered to a stakeholder, and it's been exactly what was in the design, exactly what was in the requirements, and they've gone, thank you, not what I need anymore. Reality has changed. We need something else now. And the third one is, in the process, because software development is a creative process, is we discover better ways of doing it. We have other ideas that are even better. Now, education systems generally are very bad at letting people come up with lots of ideas. If you talk to a 5-year-old and say, okay, here's a paperclip, come up with 100 uses for it, they'll do it quite easily, because they won't be bound by all the assumptions that we make, that it's this size, it's made of metal, and this is what you use it for. They'll say, well, what if it was 100 feet big, 100 meters big? What if it was made of foam rubber? Yeah? And studies show that as you go through education, our ability to come up with new ideas decreases. So by the time we reach this age, we think there's only one right idea. There can't be anything better. And if one comes along, we see it as a threat. And we do everything in our power to control it and say, no, that's not better. This is what we originally said, so that must be best. This is what we told our stakeholders. This is what we promised to the market, to the media, to the population. But there are better ideas out there. And you discover them while you're doing it. Having options is good. Having options is valuable. Being able to choose what you do while you're doing it is incredibly valuable. This is true in every other industry. So this is, I mean, I spend some time flying between here and Oslo. I have meetings in Oslo. But I don't know when they're going to end. So which flight do I buy? Do I buy all three? I don't want to be back too late, but you know, I don't want to miss my flight. If I buy all three, can I return any of them? Probably not. Norwegian Air would like to sell me the flexible ticket. The flexible ticket recognises the value in having choices. Every other industry but software recognises that giving choice and leaving choice till late is valuable. There's a whole area of financial maths about it called options thinking, optionality. There are whole financial markets based on the ability to choose late whether you do something or not. Delaying commitment. And yet we want to lock in plans at the beginning of deliveries. It's crazy. It's valuable. We need to have conversations with stakeholders that says giving you the choice is useful. So, the reality is software development always changes while you're doing it. You can try and resist it, or you can deal with the reality. If you try and decide early, that's horribly risky. Because keeping the options open later is valuable. So back to this, okay, if the future is noble, you work like this. Our future isn't like that. Ken Schwaber was one of the guys who invented Scrum, and he said, if the process is too unpredictable for the planned predictive approach, then you need something else. You need to measure and adapt. So you start off with your nice plan the work, work the plan, and you add a feedback loop. And you make that a fast feedback loop. Because you're responding to uncertainty. This is not your World War I artillery that knows where something is and that it's not going to move. This is missile interception. This says things will come in at times we don't expect, in directions we don't expect, and will move while we're trying to take it out. So rather than spending a long time planning in advance, let's fire something quickly that can adapt as it goes along. And the biggest risk there is building the wrong thing. Not building it badly, but actually starting off on what turns out to be the wrong thing. So you change from the predictive approach, and you say, we plan, we measure what we do, then we replan, and we keep doing it. And the faster you make that loop, the faster you can adapt. Again, it's the, if I'm walking with my eyes closed, how often do I open them? I don't close my eyes when I'm walking down the street. Okay? So doing it this way changes your risk profile. If there's a risk that we are doing the wrong thing, if we're only delivering it once, the risk profile kind of looks like that. We don't know, this might be the right thing, we don't know. Once we delivered, well, we know or we don't. We know it's right or it's not right. If we get something out that's small, that's low cost, which also delivers some value, the minute it hits reality, we get some feedback from reality to say, oh, that is the right direction. Or alternatively, no, that was stupid. Do something else. So our risk profile looks very, very different. We de-risk the biggest risk in software of doing the wrong thing very early on. Again, once you present it like this, suggesting we're only going to find out at the end whether all this money that we spent was worthwhile stops becoming a happy conversation. It starts becoming a very stressful conversation. Once stakeholders start learning, oh, I can find out very quickly. Was this the right thing to build? And do I need to change direction? Or actually, do I just stop? So all that sounds great, right? Who wouldn't want that stuff? If it was easy, would you be sitting here? Huh? So this is traditional Agile. Traditional Agile says nothing beats an Agile team, and I agree with that. A single team of smart people who are empowered, who have everything they need to do the right job and can communicate really well, are really, really good. If that's what your development needs, there is nothing to beat this. Especially if they have a quality focus. And a lot of agile methods are based on quality-based stuff. Fantastic. Sounds simple, yes? We can all do that? That's exactly what everything we deliver needs? How do we do this at scale? And this is where we start getting interesting. How do we do it for the kind of organizations we work for? That is not a startup in San Francisco that can do anything it wants. Because lots of agile transformations have this theory of, well, all you need is teams, right? I know there are agile at scale transformation methods where the first activity on day one is fire all the project managers. Now, one of the things about if you're trying to introduce change to an organization is presenting an existential threat to quite a large and networked power base within the organization is not a method for success. Plus, large delivery organizations are not just technical organizations, they're social organizations. And the glue that makes it work, usually, is middle management. Project managers who know how to call in favors. Look, I need an environment. You're the environments guy. I've been trying to go through proper channels. It's not working. Can you do me a favor? Who's done that? It's the way these organizations actually work. And I've seen far too many agile transformations that do this, and a year later, the whole organization grinds to a halt because nothing works anymore. So there's an agile thinking that says all you need is a very senior manager who doesn't really manage anyway, and a lot of teams. Well, that's fine with a couple of teams, right? Getting tougher. Yeah. So this one person is managing, I should have counted that, but didn't. That's about 100 people. Can you imagine having to manage 100 people directly with nothing in between you and them? It's not going to be fun. Some degree of structure is required to make it work. We have complexity. Our organizations are complex. How they deliver is complex. If what you're delivering is too big for 6 people in one room, how do you do that? What happens if, okay, we've not just got a software team, but I need to talk to PR, I need to talk to legal, I'm working in a bank, and what we're doing is going to be in all the branches, so I need to communication to the branches, training to all the branch staff, and that's before we talk to actual customers about it. And then you have things outside your control. You have requirements that come down from absolutely on high and say, no, every project currently running must do this. Environment upgrades are very much like this. You must upgrade to the latest version of WebSphere. Security requirements, regulatory requirements. If you weren't already, now you have to encrypt all credit card details. Was a fun one of the last 3 or 4 years in many places. How do you respond to that? Well, a team working on its own will say, we don't care. It's not part of our business case. The organization takes a different view. So how do you prioritize strategy over what one product needs? Established Agile is built for small things. This is the 3rd or 4th time I think I've said that. And small team Agile is fairly well defined now. Okay? If you're working in small teams, if you're not working Agile, I'm surprised you're in business still. In small organizations, Agile won. End of story. But at our kind of scale, it's different. We're doing different things. Yes, we can say to the small teams, yes, we're all going for a walk. They're going to the shops. We're taking the Oregon Trail. We're going hundreds of miles into the unknown, where not many people have been before. And certainly none of the day hikers. I'm not going to ask for a 400-mile, 1,000-mile trek advice on walking from somebody who only goes to the shops. Yeah, they might have some useful things to say, but I need a lot more than that. We need to talk to people who've been there before, that can tell you the route to go. It might not be a comprehensive map of everything, but at least we'll be able to say, follow this river for 100 miles. Then when you get to this mountain, turn north. That needs to be able to say, well, there's this really tall slope you have to go up. There's a way of doing that. We've done that one before. Because it took us a month to do it, and we tried to do it in winter. But learn from our problems. Learn from how we did it. Here's how you build a wagon. Because the earliest pioneers going west, they were city folk that didn't know how to do these things. Talking to people that have been there before. We need a better map than simple Scrum, simple XP, simple basic agility. So this is where we start talking about SAFe. Okay? So I gave you the story about how I learned about SAFe. It is built from experience and from thinking, designed for this kind of organization. It's not built for small teams. But it does synchronize and align delivery in a way that teams collaborate together for a goal. It is well thought through. I saw what started the very origins of SAFe in a book almost 10 years ago that the creator wrote, and you'll see that in a couple of slides. Yep, there's a whole website which has got a lot of nearly all of this on. Yep. And it works. And there is real experience of it. And again, we will talk through some of that. Okay? It's based on practice, but has also got a good theoretical background. Yep. You can talk theory all you like. If it doesn't work, I'm not interested. I'm a delivery guy. I want to know something that works. Not something that should work. Something that actually works. But I want to know that the fact that it works wasn't just an accident. That there is some thinking behind it that tells me why it works. And SAFe has got this in. So here's the background. Here's where SAFe came from, right? So early ways of working iteratively and incrementally. Before I was doing the kind of size I was working on, I was a web developer doing user interfaces. Sorry, I got bored standing over there. I fancied a different view. Where you didn't know what the end solution was going to be. I was doing iterative and incremental development in the mid-90s. Okay, Well, that got formalized into a lot of agile thinking in around 2001, 2002. Okay, so you have some of that. You have some lean thinking. Okay, anyone know the Toyota story? Right, so the fact that I had Deming on the previous slide is probably not a surprise to you. Okay, good. So it's got a lot of that lean thinking in, and it's got a lot of thinking about product development and flow, which there's a huge amount of maths around product development and flow, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago when I started reading it. It's all based on queuing theory. There's a great book by Don Reinertsen, Principles of Second Generation Product Development Flow, I think it is. And one way of looking at SAFe is, all right, if we took Don's book and put it to work in a software organization of this size, how would we do that? And the leading SAFe training actually goes through many of the principles in that book and says, right, the reason why this works is because, look, it's there in Reinertsen. You put all that together, and then you have some real-world experience, which knocks the corners off the theory and says, well, in a real world, yes, it should work like this, but when you have people involved, it doesn't always. And then you get SAFe. It's the guy that created it. He's got a bit of a background in this. He claims 40 years in delivering software, which I probably believe. He's written 3 books. Yes, 2 of them are theoretically requirements. Early versions of SAFe are actually in both of these books. This is a scaling book. The only reason it's called a requirements book is because, according to his publishers, when he wrote that, yeah, nobody buys process books. Do a requirements book. People will buy that. But the first half chapters of that book are an early version of SAFe. Inside the front cover, I wish I'd brought my copy with me, is an early version of the big picture diagram you have in front of you. Yep. And clearly he's got the background in Rational and IBM to really understand organizations that deliver at scale that can't fail, that have problems when they fail. You know, if a bank's systems fail, it's a big deal. If a government systems fail, you know, if Försäkringskassan's systems fail and people don't get their payments, would that be a big deal? I think it would. I was reading yesterday about, I think it was an insurance company that, because of a defect in their software, had mispaid claims for 10 years. They were not popular with the regulator. The fine involved was significant. Okay, and it's not just Dean. He's a smart guy, but it's not just him. There are others who are contributing. This guy used to be senior vice president in IBM, head of IBM Agility at one point, I believe. And there are organizations that are doing this, and there's a whole community of people who are certified and who are working with it, all of whom are contributing in to the framework. You know, what you have in front of you is version 3.0 of the big picture. First version I saw, I think, was version 2.1. It is a continuing work in progress that learns, that takes advice from how it's actually being used, and uses that to evolve. So, complexity. What all this says is we don't just need a team view, we need a view that takes account of the whole system. And as Deming said, you have to manage a system. Otherwise, actors within the system, whether they're individuals or teams, will say, well, I'll do what's right for me. My bonus depends on delivering my thing. I don't care what the rest of you say. I don't care what the rest of you do. Yep. Another Deming quote is, you give a manager a numerical target and they'll meet the target even if they have to break the company to do it. So this says you have to manage it as a system if, as an organization, You want the right outcomes. So, we have a need as enterprises that depend on software to do bigger things. You can't produce a complex system with 6 to 8 people in one room in any sane amount of time. And I could go through every one of your industries and come to the same conclusion. But you can't just make a team bigger and bigger and bigger. Because after a while, you spend all your time coordinating within the team. The number of people you need to talk to scales exponentially as the team gets bigger. You know, I mean, that's in PMI exams and has been for nearly 10 years. Big teams don't work. Not only have you got this many people to talk to, actually, when you're trying to maintain close working relationships with people, there's a limit to how many people you can do that with. You know, Robin Dunbar is a sociologist, and he's written a lot about this. Just having any kind of sustained relationship, there's a limit. You know, there's a reason human villages change, human settlements change above about 150 people. They stop being villages where everybody knows each other, really knows each other, and start becoming towns where you kind of know some people. You know your neighbours, you know your family, but you don't know the people that live over there. And Amazon have some very good thinking about this that says a project team is limited to the number of people that can eat 2 pizzas. Now, knowing Amazon's budgeting, that could be up to 30 people. No, I'm kidding. They are very concerned about money. But they do say small teams work better. So if you're trying to do something with a lot of people, you need several small teams, but you need to coordinate them. So that's what SAFE says. It says you coordinate. Your primary system is a program, a team of teams that works together and coordinates together. And using good agile principles, delivers software on a cadence, on a regular frequency, to be able to show to stakeholders, look, this is valuable. You could release this if you wanted. And please tell us whether we're doing the right thing, because your business stakeholders have probably got a better view of that than the people who are actually working on the software. And we are trying to do one thing, so we have one backlog of stuff that gets split up between the teams. We plan together, we coordinate together. But day to day, we work in our teams. Another enterprise need. It's the whole value stream. And again, this is the lean thinking. You know, I've worked in too many organizations where the coders and maybe some of the detail designers and maybe a couple of the testers are working in an agile team. And they build really high cultural walls around themselves because the rest of the organization doesn't work that way. They say, we are the agile guys, and everybody else hates us, and we hate them. Because they're old school. They're not agile. It becomes almost a religious war. How well is that going to work for cooperation and delivering value and working with business stakeholders? How well is it going to work with your operations people who want stable platforms? You know, sometimes you get a bit of allowance where the organization says, well, okay, you kids do your agile thing, as long as we have milestones and a critical path plan that at least you can pretend to be part of. It doesn't really work. What happens when you have that, if the team is really good, is the development team works really fast, but everything outside of it works really slowly. If you spend time measuring the amount of process efficiency in terms of time, this bit works really well, this bit goes really slowly, and most of the time, the work waits. And the same there. We have our annual release. Or if we're really good, our quarterly release. I actually worked with a defence organisation, the British Navy, And you could only deploy software when the ship was in port. I didn't actually work a way around that one. But what you need to do is you need to expand the agile process to have the whole value stream. From business needs and portfolio planning and prioritization right the way through to, and now it's live. So SAFE does that. It absolutely has a portfolio layer that talks about business prioritization at a high level, that talks about what's the next most important thing to do. But let's recognize that we can only do so much at one time. So let's not try and stuff paper into our printer, because that doesn't work. We understand the pace that our teams run at, and we're going to run at that pace. But we devolve enough of the decision-making down to programs, down to teams, that not everything has to go up to the most senior person in the organization for a decision, because that's a good way to delay everything. So there's a whole layer about portfolio management in SAFE. And the way it does, it has a really nice construct. It has a release train. Think about that as a timetable. If I only have an annual release, and my requirement misses this year's planning cycle, I'm going to be very cross because I'm waiting a year for it. So I will do everything I can to jam it in. This is why programs grow and become unsustainable. Because everybody's idea, even if it's not ready yet, even if it's a crazy idea that I've only thought about for 20 minutes, damn it, I'm not waiting a year for that. It goes in. So SAFE has a concept of a release train, something that can deliver regularly and frequently, that says, I missed that one. There's another one coming along. It's fine. That gives me enough time to think my idea through a little, but not so much that it's going to wait for a year. So again, it's a rolling wave cycle of planning. And it's done on a piece of functionality at a time. So you don't end up chartering whole projects, which are big batches that take a long time. You say, well, I don't have to gather everything up. I have standing organizations that deliver for a product. Okay, well, I have a bunch of features that kind of work together and need to work together. I'll put those in together without it having to have all the setup and tear down costs of a project organization. So you have this concept we develop on a cadence. Every 2 weeks, there's something that could be releasable. And we gather, slightly larger things that really need to go together into larger chunks. But the business decides when to release it. Which means I can start working on if I'm a retailer, my big thing will be, well, from now really till Christmas is when I make all my money. So I want to start developing that probably in February. Well, if the team delivers a lot of it early, great. But I can choose when to deliver, when to put it to production. Okay, so we were asking about metrics. We're asking about how this works. So as we said, we have decentralized rolling wave planning. We have estimating and planning that doesn't try and work out exactly how many days it's going to be. It says we can deliver at this rate. If I put something in here, when will it come out? And what's the prioritization discussion I need to have? How much of that will I get through in a year, or 6 months, or 3 months, relative to other things? How it's delivered, well, the team manages itself. We have an overall way of working and budgeting that says we will fund incrementally. I never need to go and ask for 10 million, 100 million SEK. I will just say, give me the next chunk. I don't need to talk about sunk cost, because everything we've paid for is already delivered. And we have a strong...
Isn't that a key issue. I mean, if you are in a large organization with a large change demands,
Yeah.
requiring a lot of money to realize how do you handle that?
So how do I, sorry, this is for our viewers, hello viewers, remotely. How do we handle large organizations that have large amounts of money at risk?
Yeah, and for them to be able to decide which way to realize the change.
Okay.
Need.
And for them to decide prioritization and be in control. A lot of it is understanding when will this realize value. A lot of it is understanding how much of our capacity will this take up, and therefore it becomes a prioritization discussion. SAFE has got a very nice economic model that balances. Look, if you've got something, if everything is the same value, but things are different sizes, you do the small things first, because then you'll get them out faster. If everything is the same size, and some things are more or less valuable, you do the valuable things first, right? SAFE has got a very nice economic model that balances between those, called weighted shortest job first. Or if you prefer a different acronym, what would Jesus fund? Sorry, what should Jesus fund? That says we will have economic-based decisions about what we deliver first, next, after that. But we understand that we have an ongoing delivery organisation. So it's how do we make the best use of that delivery organisation? With enough predictability to say if I put something in here, when am I likely to get it? Which you can then do business planning based on. And based on what is our strategy. Well, our strategy for the next year is, okay, so that means this is probably going to be more valuable than that because it's on strategy. And then we have a governance method that is absolutely fact-based. Who's worked on a program where the reporting has gone green, 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 ah! Or seen project reports that somehow get greener as they go up the organisation? Yeah, all the time. SAFE's metrics are factual. In God we trust, everybody else brings data. But that gives, if you have the transparency, you generate a lot of trust. Because the senior management, once they truly understand that you are doing this, stop distrusting you. Because they can see, no matter where I look, I get the same answer. Who I talk to, I get the same information. I'm not being misled here. When they tell me it's on time, it's on time. When they tell me it's late, it's late. If they tell me it's 95% delivered, it's not 95% of documents written but no actual code. It's 95% actual valuable working software. Okay, and our third enterprise need. Each of your organizations is unique. I can't come into you and say, here's a perfect template, do it exactly like this, and it will be perfect. Your products are different, your stakeholders are different, your delivery people are different, your culture is different, your history is different, your technology is different. And that's just 6 off the top of my head. So we need a balance. Yes, we need enough content and enough information to guide this is a sensible way to do it. Organizations like yours, with your kinds of needs, find this useful. But it has to be adaptable. It has to be lightweight enough to be able to say, okay, now we've actually done it like that, how well did that work? How can we learn from that and make it better in the context of our organization? All the way through this diagram, there is a thing called inspect and adapt. I haven't actually looked at it today. Yes, I&A, demo and retrospective. It is absolutely pervasive. And if you come on the training, we do this in the training as well. We have retrospectives that say, how well did that work? Can we make it better? Can we make it fit our needs better? So in some senses, SAFE is quite lightweight, especially at the portfolio level where things are really different between organizations. There is guidance, but it's not going to constrain you. Okay, the big question, does it work? Would I be standing here if I thought it didn't work? No, clearly. Here's the evidence. I wish I could talk about specific examples that I've seen. It's difficult for me for confidentiality reasons. But there are. Oh, yeah, okay. I added in this bit. Okay, I'll come back to evidence in a minute. This all sounds great. You're all experienced people, probably as cynical as I am. Certainly if you've managed projects, you'll be very cynical about what people tell you and try and sell you. Yeah, it's going to require you to change as well. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know that you are committing yourself to a journey that will change you as much as your organization. You will have to learn different ways of behaving. You know, somebody was talking about resource management. I can't talk about resources anymore. This is a resource. Okay? My laptop is a resource. You are people. Organizations talk about resources. I actually find that now quite a painful term to talk about real, living, feeling human beings. You have to realize that as managers, you're no longer going to be in control. The definition of a knowledge worker, according to Peter Drucker, is somebody who knows more about what they do than their boss does. I don't know how to do code. It's been a long time since I've touched code in a professional sense. You wouldn't want me near code. So here we are as managers, directing people who do stuff we don't understand. Why would we do that? Why would we try and tell them how to do it? We tell them what we need, what this has to result in, how they do it. We have to give them the autonomy to do it. We have to realize that in a complex organization, sometimes things will go differently from what we expected. That has to be okay. Because otherwise we get too cross with reality and we end up bitter and twisted, like me. We have to say, yes, we will fail sometimes, but it's better to do that quickly and learn from it than spend 2 years saying, no, it's not going wrong, it's not going wrong, it's not going wrong. And instead of saying, please bring the information to where the power is, we have to say, well, the place where things is really happening is where the work is going. It's happening. We have to learn to go and see. Talk to the people who are doing the work. Show respect to them because they know stuff we don't know. But then, as managers, we get to ask, why do we do it that way? And we have coaching conversations that help people learn about context that we as managers know better than they do. They know how, we know why. But for many managers, that's a tough journey. Traditional project managers in particular are absolutely told these things, right? This is project management as most organizations understand it. As project managers, deprogramming ourselves from that to that is a tough journey. So we need lean leaders who provide lean leadership, not so much management. That needs to be us. I'm sure I had a... Yeah, we're going to get to the evidence in a minute, and I know we're starting to run short of time. So you have a choice. If you want to do this, you can do one or two things. And I like risk-based decisions. Okay, high risk, it's completely novel. First time anywhere. Low risk, yeah, we've done it loads of times before. We know how to do this. So you can be a pioneer. And I know organizations that have done this, and they've done it very successfully. And if it works, you will evolve something that works brilliantly for you. If it works. Risk. Or you can start with something that you know kind of works in the kind of organizations you work in. When you start, you won't be very good at it, and it won't fit your organization very well. Not perfectly. So you evolve, but you have a starting place that you know is not going to go horribly wrong. So if you know what you're doing, and you've seen it before, you have expectations about how this is going to work. If not, you only have hopes. Talking to an executive about, well, we hope this is going to work, is that a comfortable conversation? No. So, case studies, hooray! I only added in those last things last night, so forgive me. So, there are a number of published case studies that we can talk about. All these are available on the website. You can go and download every single one of those. Most of those I probably know who the individual who's involved. Or can find the individual if you actually wanted to talk to them. But it works in real life. Either as a complete, every layer done, or, I've seen organizations just do the team and the program level and haven't yet evolved to the portfolio level. That works. Okay, do you need this? Do you ever hear any of those in your organization? If you do, this might be helpful to you. So we wanted to talk about change frameworks. This is the closest that I've got to it, and we are running short of time. Yeah. So there is a defined method for doing this that has been tried and tested. If you want to evolve your own, that again is perfectly fine. But that says, get somebody that knows this stuff. Hello. Get them to train your leaders. Yes. And no organizational change will work unless leadership is involved. And then we start. If your organization wants to learn how to do this, and this is where our dear hosts are very interested, I am running a 3-day course specifically targeted at delivery leaders and a secondary audience of change agents who influence them, that goes through everything we've talked about in the last hour and a bit in a lot more detail. You've had one of the exercises from it, so it's not just a stand and talk. It is a participation thing, coming out of which you or anybody who goes on this will have a good understanding of how do we do this in my organization? Because that's one of the exercises. How, okay, I know some stuff, how would it work for me in my context? As a start to saying, right, I'm not just going to do this for the sake of theory, I'm going to take it back to my organization and start talking about this. Or alternatively, I'll learn, actually, for my organization, this isn't going to work. That's also a valid outcome. But you will have a clear understanding at the end of those 3 days, what does this really mean? And how might this work for me? Okay, we have 7 minutes left in the time slot. So what I want to do is go through these and say, have we covered them? Okay, I have got a little time. I can stay behind afterwards without taking everybody's time to talk through some of them. I think everything that, well, some of these I know are covered in the training in much more detail, and I may refer you to those. Okay, so did we talk about examples?
You show where I can find it.
I showed you where we can find it. Okay. Did we talk about project management? Enough to say that project managers are useful people to have around. there is absolutely a role for things that project managers do. You may no longer call them project managers. You may call them something different. Those skills are really useful skills to have, because primarily they're problem-solving skills and issue unblocking skills. And if you think we're not going to need that in this kind of organization, you're crazy. Okay, we talked a little bit about SAFE as an evolving framework. Okay, so architecture, I know the concept of architectural runway has been in the framework since at least 2.1. It may not have been on the diagram. But absolutely the concept that architecture evolves far enough ahead of development to offer options to development, but still keep enough flexibility open so that the business can say, actually, we need to go this way. So there's a balance. But it is an evolving framework, and it will continue to evolve.
Did you talk about all the years?
Yes, there is a whole module on architecture. Resource management. So we mentioned demand management. We mentioned my personal problem with the word resources. Essentially, a lot of it is about building relatively standing teams that are going to be there for a while. Yes, over time, you may see over the next 6 months the demand for this part of it will grow, and that part of it will shrink, so we'll balance. But it's not the day-by-day, this person must be 100% utilized. Otherwise, we will move them and we will time slice them across. No, it allocates people to teams and say, this is where you work in your team. Talk to me afterwards and I'll tell you why having people 100% utilized is crazy anyway. Okay, enterprise architecture. We did talk about there are clearly requirements that come down from on high that says these are the constraints you must work under. Your technology stack will be this. Oh, and now you have to change your architecture to take account of the fact that we are upgrading or we are changing from this to that. That's absolutely part of demand management. And what SAFE says is you need to have an agreement between business and technology stakeholders that always some of your capacity will need to be technical stuff that the business doesn't understand the value they'll get. It's the only way that you keep the architecture flexible enough to be able to meet whatever needs they have. But again, there is more architecture in the training. Okay, change from the top. If you don't have your senior stakeholders bought in and actively promoting this, then you will get the bubble of culture that's just half a dozen coders and testers. Yes, you need to engage everybody. Yes, you can't impose this is your new way of working. But you have to have the executive support. You have to do the stakeholder management from the top to say, if you want the benefits of this, we have to change the whole system. There's a financial services company I'm working with at the moment who have realized this. They've done one program in an agile way. Now they're saying, well, to do the whole of what we do like that, we have to start with the C-level execs. So we're running some stakeholder change management with them to tell them this is how your organization is changing. We'll have to change, and you will have to lead that. Not just say we're doing it, but actually be at the front of it and show different behaviors, just the management and leadership behavior change we were talking about. Metrics. SAFE has got a whole load of metrics. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. But they are about agility. They are about quality. They are about outcomes. And they are absolutely fact-based rather than interpretation-based and designed to generate trust and transparency so that your organization keeps faith that you are doing the right thing and knows when you're not and feels like it is in control enough. Again, in the course, we have a section on metrics, particularly at the portfolio level. There is plenty on the site. about it, I have some other materials as well. How to address change. That's always a fun one. To a certain degree, it's going to be based on this is your organisation and what does your organisation need. It will require top-down change. It will require bottom-up change. But if leadership doesn't understand how to do this, it's not going anywhere. Safe change starts with leaders. That's you. Is there anything else, very briefly, either I can do this one-to-one, or is there anything else significant that anybody wants to cover before the bell goes? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for playing the penny game. And I hope to see some of you in a few weeks. Thank you to the people watching remotely as well.